Digital transformation happens in the wonderful phrasing of Ernest Hemingway, gradually, then suddenly. As this passage from The Sun also rises, in which a character describes how he went bankrupt. But technological change happens that same way. And we are gradually, then suddenly realizing that the world is infused with the digital. It's not just something that's confined to a screen. It's not just something that affects content, it affects every business. And we're increasingly having to come to grips with what it means when we, all of us, all of our businesses, human beings, are enmeshed in a vast digital machine, when we are contributing content to these systems, but they're also shaping how we think. When we're working on platforms that use us as components of an algorithmic system. You think about how Uber or Lyft drivers are guided by machines, and how that design pattern is coming to more and more parts of our economy. So digitalization is affecting everything, and we need to understand it natively. We need to understand how to build businesses that can harness it. We need to train people in the skills of improving and managing digital systems. And I make the point in my book that programmers are not actually workers. They're managers. The workers are software today. One of the key ideas that I explore in my book is, what can we learn about the great technology platforms that can be useful to us in understanding the broader economy? And there are 4 or 5 interlocked ideas. And the first one is that progress doesn't always go up and to the right. It's much more like a fitness landscape where there are peaks and valleys. And it's very hard for companies to get from a fitness peak to another fitness peak. Usually the next wave comes up from the valley again. And there are exceptions. There are companies that have managed to get to a second fitness peak. Google is a good example with the smartphone. If you contrast that with Microsoft and the internet. And they did it by being generous, by giving Android and Chrome and various other things away. They're now giving AI away in certain ways, open sourcing their tools. And the point of that is really that generosity turns out to be a key part of the platform story, because technology platforms actually are balancing creating supply as well as creating demand. Think about the Apple App Store. It's not just Apple that's producing the content. Apple has to have incentives for developers to create apps. Google has to have incentives for people to create content. And we see also in platforms like Uber and Lyft, the challenge is to get enough passengers and also enough drivers. And so I'm really exploring this dynamic of platforms. And then you kind of say, oh, actually, inclusive economies perform better. We see books like Daron Acemoglu's How Nations Fail, making that point. Go, oh, that's also what happens to these platforms. But there's another big idea, which is that platforms teach us that there is an objective function. These platforms are increasingly guided by digital algorithms. And if you get the objective function wrong, that is the thing that you're optimizing for, the whole system can fall down. And the objective function doesn't always do what we think it does. Facebook said, hey, we're going to show people more of what they like, more of what they share, more of what they favorite and comment on, and it'll bring people closer together and make them use the platform more. They didn't expect it to amplify hyperpartisanship, to drive people apart. But they discovered that it did. They also discovered there were bad actors who learned to exploit the system. And now they're desperately trying to say, well, how do we fix these things? And I take that really to a lesson about the economy, because we have told companies that the thing you should optimize for is profit for shareholders. And that turns out to have all kinds of untoward effects on our economy, just like Facebook's objective function had untoward effects on its platform. And so I, again, try to draw the parallels to what do we learn about the economy here. So, and ultimately, the lessons that I come to is that we have the potential for a better distribution of the fruits of machine productivity. We should be putting the machines to work to build a better world. I think the biggest challenge that any company faces when they are confronting disruptive innovation is that they tend to focus on their own survival. And as a result, they forget that their job is to do a job for their customers, to do a job, to harness the work of their people to make something happen in the world. And so I would just say that focus on what you're trying to accomplish and how this new technology lets you do it better. Because if all you're trying to do is preserve yourself in the face of this new technology, you're taking your eye off the ball. I mean, I've spent so much time, like in my original business, which was publishing, where I, so many of my peers were just like, how do we preserve what we have? How do we preserve? And, my response was, don't think about that. Think about what job do you do for your customers? How do you do it better? And so, I look at my company. Our publishing business is about half the size that it was in 2000, but my company is 5 times the size that it was in 2000. Mm-hmm. And why is that? Because we said, oh, well, we basically are a knowledge transfer company. We're not a publishing company. And so we started an events business. We built an online learning, platform. And so we basically found new ways to do the job that we were trying to do. One of the largest challenges in the economy today, first of all, you have legacy firms that are facing new kinds of disruptive innovation, trying to come to grips with it. But the biggest change is as companies try to adopt the new technology, they don't realize that they have to be different. Josh Bersin says, doing digital is not the same as being digital. And understanding how you transform your entire organization so that it is using digital feedback loops, it's gathering data, it's getting smarter all the time. You're understanding how you design the systems, how you manage the systems, how you manage people when they're working together with machines, requires entirely new business competencies. We're really just at the beginning of understanding how to create the next generation of corporation, which is a network infused with digital algorithms in which people are working together, cognitively augmented by the machines that are their partners in the business.